biggest games, the best performances, expert analysis. You are Locked On Now.
What's going on, everyone? You are listening to Locked On Now, local experts on the biggest stories around the NFL. I'm your host, Kim Becker, and thanks so much for making Locked On Now your first listen every weekday morning. On today's episode, we will recap the big game that was Monday Night Football, and we'll look ahead to Week 7 for the biggest questions in the NFL. But first, let's talk about the Tennessee Titans win over the Buffalo Bills.
The best performance.
Hold up.
The Tennessee Titans were the underdog at home before they came into the Monday night game against the Buffalo Bills, who before the game were favored to win the Super Bowl, but now we're not so sure as they fall to 4-2. And the Tennessee Titans just came away with explosive plays from, you guessed it, Derrick Henry. What a guy, just really fired up the team and got that win for them at home. Let's hear what our Locked On Titans host had to say about the big game.
Wow! Tyler Rowland here, host of the Locked On Titans podcast with my instant reaction to the Tennessee Titans Monday Night Football victory over the Buffalo Bills, 34-31. What an incredible game by the Titans when everyone was counting them out. An underdog at home. The Buffalo Bills fans had invaded the stadium, but none of that mattered because the Bills will continue to remember the Tennessee Titans. Again, the Titans offense showed up after a slow start. They really got into gear, led by Derrick Henry, who continues to prove that he is the best running back in the NFL, hands down. A.J. Brown came to life late in the game, and the Titans offense put 34 points up. The Titans defense, while having some inconsistent moments and giving up some bad plays, came to play as well. They forced a turnover. They did a great job on the Bills in the red zone, and ultimately, players like Kevin Byard, Jeffrey Simmons, and Harold Landry were able to carry them to a victory, including the game-winning fourth down stop on the goal line. The Tennessee Titans continue to be the best team in the NFL at defending one blade of grass. The Titans come out victorious on Monday Night Football against the Buffalo Bills, 34-31. For more analysis, check out the Locked On Titans podcast and the Locked On Titans YouTube channel. And thank you for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen every day.
Derrick Henry, such a stud and such a cool story. His parents were 15 and 16 when he was born. His biological grandma actually raised him, and his father was arrested 20 times as he was a child. So really great to see Derrick Henry coming out and thriving as a Tennessee Titan. And let's stay on topic with the Titans because our biggest game in Week 7 is Titans-Chiefs, both coming off of some momentum. The Chiefs had a couple of losses before their win in Week 6, but this is going to be a big game, especially as the Titans come off of this big win with the Bills. So let's see what our Locked On Chiefs host has to say about the Week 7 matchup.
Will the real Kansas City Chiefs please stand up? That is the question here. I'm Ryan Tracy from Locked On Chiefs. The question that we need answered is, who are they at this point? We saw them get things turned around against a Washington football team that was not exactly a prime candidate for competition. Now they get to face the Tennessee Titans, who just came off and survived a Josh Allen-led Buffalo Bills team that put a good hurting on them, played a physical game, and nearly took that game from them. Will the Titans be worn out in their matchup with the Chiefs? Are the Chiefs ready to withstand that, not shoot themselves in the foot, and make sure that they take advantage of every aspect that they have? Those are the questions that we need answered this week, and you can hear more about it on Locked On Chiefs.
Coming up on Locked On Now, more big questions that we need answered for some of our matchups in Week 7. So make sure that you stay tuned to Locked On Now. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Locked On Now, and thanks for making Locked On Now your first listen every weekday morning. I'm your host, Kim Becker, and we will now look at more big questions for Week 7 in the AFC. Let's turn it over to the Denver Broncos, Cleveland Browns. The Browns are coming off of a couple of tough losses. The Cardinals blew them out at home. We had the whole Kyler Murray, Baker Mayfield matchup, so that was a tough one for the Browns. And the Denver Broncos also coming off of a tough loss to the Las Vegas Raiders at Mile High after the whole John Gruden situation as well. So really, these two teams are looking to gain some momentum against one another, and we have the biggest questions from both our Locked On Browns host and our Locked On Broncos host. Let's take a listen.
Let's go around the league.
This is Locked On Browns host Jeff Lloyd with your Browns' biggest question headed into Week 7, Thursday Night Football at home versus the Denver Broncos. This team right now is literally and figuratively a wounded animal. Injuries mounting, too many to count. You lose a devastating game on the road to the Los Angeles Chargers. You come home and get the doors ripped off of you against the Arizona Cardinals. Now it's Thursday Night Football. You're 3-3, big spot in your season. How do you respond? Do you come out fighting? Do you find a way to pull this off? Give your team the 10 days of rest that they absolutely desperately need? Or do you lose again and find yourselves possibly at a crossroads in your 2021 season?
The biggest question for the Denver Broncos heading into Week 7 on a short week against the Cleveland Browns has a lot to do with how they can bounce back after a disappointing Week 6 performance. I'm Cody Rourke, host of Locked On Broncos, and the Broncos face the Cleveland Browns on Thursday Night Football. The biggest question for them on the offensive side of the ball, how can they rebound? How can they get off to a faster start and be efficient on the offensive side of the ball? How can they get the run game going? These have been questions we've been asking for the last 6 weeks for the Broncos offensive side of the ball. Defensively, how can you avoid giving up the big play? Will Baker Mayfield play? That's obviously another contingent factor upon this, but the Broncos defense needs a big bounce back this week. Short turnaround, Thursday Night Football against the Cleveland Browns. Thanks for making Locked On Broncos your first listen of the day. You can listen to the show, follow along on your favorite audio podcasting platform, and subscribe on YouTube.
Now let's turn it over to the New England Patriots versus the New York Jets. Two rookie quarterbacks, Zach Wilson and Mac Jones, going head-to-head at Foxborough. Now, if the New York Jets do come away with a win here, it will be the first time in almost 10 years that they beat the Patriots at home in Foxborough. So I think it's safe to say that Bill Belichick is going to be doing everything that is humanly possible for him to make sure that does not happen. Let's hear what our Locked On Jets host thinks the biggest question on this matchup is.
All about Zach Wilson. I'm John from Locked On Jets, and the biggest question facing the New York Jets this week is whether the coaching staff can get its rookie quarterback going. It's been a disappointing start to the season for Zach Wilson, who finds himself near the bottom of most major statistical categories. There have been some good moments, like the Week 4 thrilling overtime victory over Tennessee, but Wilson has really struggled playing from the pocket. Most of his big plays this year have been outside the play structure, where he's evaded pressure and kept his eyes down the field. The Jets coaching staff off its bye needs to figure out a way to get Wilson comfortable playing within the pocket and making reads quicker and more decisively.
And now, not necessarily the biggest questions, but Week 7 has 6 teams on a bye week, which is pretty rare. And 2 of those teams are coming off of some significant games in Week 6, one of them being the Jacksonville Jaguars. Trevor Lawrence, rookie quarterback, obviously first-round draft pick, has his first win of the NFL in London. So a big game for him, and now they get to come back to the States, have their bye week, and then head into Week 8. And the Los Angeles Chargers, poor Justin Herbert, tough loss for them against the Ravens, also have a bye week to prepare for their next matchup after Week 7. But let's hear what both our Locked On Jaguars and Locked On Chargers hosts had to say about this last game and their bye week.
The Chargers are giving up 162.5 rushing yards per game, which is dead last in the NFL. This is David Drogemeyer of the Locked On Chargers podcast, and this week's biggest question is, how are the Chargers going to fix their run defense? They're giving up close to 5 yards per carry on the ground, which is allowing opposing offenses to stay on the field and get easy conversions. The Chargers have dealt with injuries like every other team in the NFL, with guys like defensive tackle Justin Jones being on IR, linebackers Kenneth Murray and Drew Tranquill both dealt with injuries. All of those guys should return after the bye week, but I don't know if the Chargers have the right personnel on the team right now to really fix this problem. Chargers general manager Tom Telesco has never made an in-season trade to acquire a player in his 9-year tenure in the NFL as the Chargers general manager. That has to change right now. The Chargers need the help. They have plenty of cap space and draft capital to make it work. They need to go make it happen. But for more on the Chargers, please check out Locked On Chargers, your team every day.
It's Tony Wiggins with Locked On Jaguars. Looking at the biggest question for the Jaguars moving ahead, going into this bye week. Can they use the victory in London as a way to reboot the season? In other words, some of the enthusiasm coming into the year had been lost by some off-the-field turmoil and 4 straight losses. Well, they got a victory the other day, and now they're heading into a bye week before they play the Seattle Seahawks. Can they use this to totally reboot and start over? Learn from the victory on how to build off of that victory and that momentum, and now have a new lease on the season. The fans are really happy with the new enthusiasm. The fans are really happy that they finally ended the 20-game losing streak. Now, can the Jags continue to improve and build on this momentum that they have coming off of this victory the other day against Miami? That's the biggest question for the team moving forward, and we'll see what happens here in about 13 days.
Thanks for making Locked On Now your first listen every weekday morning. I'm your host, Kim Becker, and that was a Locked On Now NFL episode. We looked ahead at Week 7 for the AFC and what the biggest questions were going to be for those matchups. Locked On, your team every day.